Well, this project's sort of looking at what happened to this site after the bit that people remember it most for. When you come to Monk Bretton, you tend to think of it as being a priory with sort of monks and dating from the medieval period. But after Henry VIII closed down the monasteries in the 16th century, this site got taken over by a family called the Blythemans, who turned it into a house. And eventually it came under the ownership of the Earls of Shrewsbury, who owned other properties around here. Well, it's a very nice site, isn't it? And it's a site that's actually received virtually no work or research on it in the last 100 years since it was sort of cleared by its landowner in the 1920s. So it's a perfect place to come. Hoping to find evidence for Tudor activity, possibly Tudor house, perhaps activities related to the dismantling of the monastery after it's gone out of use, that sort of thing. Oh yes, we've found lots of buildings, lots of structures, lots of pottery, all that sort of thing, all dating to the 16th century. Well, essentially, the most prominent thing we found is a large fireplace structure, and there's walls around that associated with it. And it looks like they may be undertaking some form of industrial activity at the site, which may be connected to them stripping off the leads off the roofs of the monastery, that sort of thing. Well, it's really nice, actually, because, I mean, you visit a site like this and it just looks like pristine sort of grass, and then actually it's just full of archaeology below the surface. It's really fun. Oh, I think the whole area, the whole site is covered with more sort of unknown archaeology, so it would be very nice to come back. I think it's really important. Sometimes people think that if you work for a university, you don't take too much pay much attention to the local communities around you. But this is a chance where we can sort of show that the history and the sort of culture of the local region is really important. It wasn't a surprise to them, but I think they were very happy that we've come along, and we'll be working with the Friends of Monk Bretton and providing material for their website and for English Heritage too, who are the guardians of the site. So we'll be sort of feeding back to the local groups. We keep everything that we find, so it all gets washed and then we catalogue it. Some pieces we draw, because some pieces are quite large. We have sort of big handles from jugs and almost complete vessels. And so we study it, and then eventually it goes off to the museum. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the ways you can really sort of get in touch with history, rather than just sort of reading about it in a book. You can actually physically touch things that people used 400 or 500 years ago. Oh, we had about 18 months of planning before we even disturbed the ground. So we start with survey work, looking at old maps. We use geophysical equipment that sort of helps show us what's underneath the ground and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of preparation. You don't just turn up and dig a big hole. You have to get permission to dig on a site like this because it's a scheduled ancient monument. So everything has to be done by the book. Well, we get things that are quite big, like this is actually a bit of a medieval window. This is the top part of the window, and you can see there's a line either side of it, and that's where the window glass would actually fit in. So this is a bit of stonework from the priory that's then been reused as sort of hardcore and rubble in the later building. And we also get some very small things, and this is a little piece of a drinking cup that's about 450 years old, and probably used for drinking beer or something like that, and quite a sort of delicate little thing.
For you, when you're holding something like that and it's 450 years old, what do you think of? Do you think of the people that could have used it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you wonder who the last person was who held it, and who was the person who broke it as well.